So we're doing a brake service just because usually these slider pins here get seized, and then once these guys get seized, the pads don't squeeze, and then your pad inside here wears out. Now this customer's been doing them, so I know they're gonna be nice and looped, hopefully. But let's see. They're all here, so let's see. Just see how stiff they are. And there we go. And then that. Then what you're looking for is when you undo it. See how it's nice and looped? There's no rust on it. That's what you're looking for. So we usually just put new lube in here, sand these guys down, resurface the rotor, and then sand down the hub. So then when you put the wheel on, it has a nice and clean surface. And go from there.
Voila. And how often should people have their brakes?
1 year or 16 to 20,000 kilometers, depending on how often they drive and how long, right? But we usually recommend them here at a year, usually. Every tire change. But I mean, obviously, if we see them that they're stuck, we're gonna recommend it sooner than later, because we don't want brakes wearing out and then all of a sudden you got no more brakes left going down the 417. That's not good. But yeah, and then all you're looking for is a nice, like this. So when the rotor sits here, the caliper, sorry, this guy here then squeezes on the back pad, like this, and then the whole caliper moves in like this to apply this pad here like this on this side. And that's why these have to be nice and looped up, because otherwise you can't make that connection and return. They're like springs with lubrication on them, if you think about it like that. Gonna loop this one.
So now with these new cars, they, everyone says that the car will tell you when to service it.
Not necessarily on brake services. It's mostly on oil changes and transmission flushes and stuff like that, right? But brake services are more for preventative maintenance than anything, right? Like we try to recommend as often as possible, like within reason. Otherwise, otherwise you get sticky brakes and that's no good. And then usually we go in here and we just grind down where the pad sits, right here and right there, to get it nice and shiny again. Just so then what we call the ears right here, like I'm gonna sand this down too, then the ears here, you get a nice and shiny surface, and if you get two nice and shiny surfaces, the lube will stick like the anti-seize. Once the anti-seize sticks, it's gonna lubricate back and forth correctly, right? So we just basically take everything apart, lube it up, put it back together, and see you in a year from now.
I like it, thank you.
No. When you feel them sticking, like when you apply brakes and you feel a slight feedback in the pedal, no, because these have drum brakes in the rear, it's a different feeling than if you disc all around. If you disc all around, you would feel everything in the pedal. With disc brakes, they're mainly for the e-brake, right? But with disc brakes, they're less maintenance because they last longer and because they're all enclosed, so you don't get rust like this, right? Because it's a whole disc assembly that sits on top. So if you have pads all around, you would feel it in the pedal. If you got this, you would feel them when you go brake, you would feel the car slightly vibrate. And that's how you know the difference, if you need one. Now usually you would, every maintenance, so once a year when you do your oil change, when you do your big maintenance, we always check the brakes, right? And then we say, okay, you may need a brake service, just because like on the edge usually here is where it does the most corrosion, like you can see dug into the pad here, right? And that's part of your braking surface. So if that's missing, like ground down like that, that's, I would say, 2-3% of your braking, but do the whole thing and you got no more brakes. So yeah, so every service when you come in here, we check your brakes, recommend brakes if you need them. If you need a service, we can get away with the service.